want to start about the debate tomorrow night. Will you be down in Florida or up in D.C. for Debate Central watching?
I will be in DC. Unfortunately, I'd much rather be out of the swamp and down in Florida. But we'll
Well,
have to view it from here. We have votes on Friday, and then hope to join the president for his rally in Virginia, which I think is really highlight shipbuilding, which we've talked about, the largest Navy base in the world, and politically, Virginia absolutely could be in play. We'll have Governor Youngkin there too.
oh, that is terrific. Now, Congressman, I want to start by talking to you about Russia exports of their fossil fuels. Someone once told me that Russia is Saudi Arabia with trees. We're supposed to be sanctioning them and cutting that off, just like we're supposed to be sanctioning and cutting off Iran's oil. I don't think we're doing that, are we?
Well, we have sanctions in place. You remember in the run up to the war in Ukraine, Biden threatening the mother of all sanctions and crippling the Russian economy. But the reality is, the Russians are selling just as much oil and gas as they ever were. They're doing it through brokers in China, and they're doing it through India, and then a ghost fleet that is routing it right back to Europe. The other frustrating part, Hugh, is many of our military bases, U.S. military bases in Europe, are still running on Russian gas. Think of the irony there. Russia's exporting it across the Black Sea to Turkey. Then it goes through Turkish refineries, and magically, it's now NATO produced oil and gas that can go to military facilities. The point is, Biden is not enforcing the sanctions on Russia, nor is he enforcing the sanctions on Iran. The price of oil is relatively high. And at the end of the day, the reason he's not enforcing it is because he's worried about domestic politics back here at home. At the same time, he's pandering to the left by banning the export of American oil and gas. So it's a sad irony on multiple levels. Inflation stays high, the gas price at home stays relatively high, and our adversaries' economies stay flush with cash as they prosecute their wars, all because of Biden's climate agenda and all because he wants to pander to the left here at home.
Now, Congressman Waltz, the one economy that is reeling, besides Israel's, is Egypt's. And people don't know that Egypt is our ally. They're a peace partner with Israel. It's cold peace, but it's a peace. They rely on Suez Canal traffic for a lot of their economy, and the Houthis have been allowed to stop or greatly diminish that traffic. And the U.S. Navy is tied down by the Houthis, but they cannot defeat them. Are you amazed that the United States, the leading military power in the world, cannot shut down the Houthis?
Well, we could, Hugh, but the Navy's hands are tied by restrictive ROE, or rules of engagement, from this administration. I mean, it was months into the Houthis launching these missiles and hitting international shipping. The Navy was allowed to shoot down the missiles in flight, but not actually strike the launchers. Finally, they've crossed that hurdle. But at the end of the day, as long as Iran is flush with cash, as long as that price of oil is high, and we refuse to unleash our oil and gas on the market and drive it down, the Iranians are going to be able to resupply them with drones, with anti-ship missiles, with surface unmanned vehicles that are also acting as kind of suicide drones, uh, and all the resources the Houthis need to prosecute it. What's been the result? 90% of global shipping is no longer transiting the Suez Canal, and Egypt gains a lot of its national revenue through Suez Canal transit fees. So here you have, bear with me a second, China getting cheap oil and gas from Iran, Iran flush with cash as it sends drones to Russia to attack Ukraine, and then resources to the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas. And now Egypt could start destabilizing the Arab world's most populous nation because it's running out of cash. Or, I mean, all because we refuse to go back to maximum pressure on both Iran and Russia in terms of enforcing the sanctions, and all because Biden's pandering to the left and won't unleash American energy onto global markets. It is the most
Let me
asinine
pick
thing
up on
I've ever seen.
let me pick up on pandering to the left. This happened yesterday, Congressman Waltz. I don't know if you've seen it yet. Our ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas Greenfield, went to the monthly meeting of the Security Council that deals with Israel and the war in Gaza and the soon to erupt war in Lebanon. Her opening statement begins thus. Play it, please, Dwayne.
The world's eyes are rightfully on Gaza, but we cannot ignore the situation in the West Bank. Last year saw the highest number of Palestinians killed in the West Bank since the UN began collecting data in 2005. 6 months into 2024, the number of Palestinians killed in the West Bank remains deeply alarming. We're concerned by the significant uptick in deadly violence against Palestinian civilians by settlers in the West Bank and condemn it in the strongest terms. We urge Israel, working in coordination with the Palestinian authorities, to prevent these attacks. Colleagues, we reiterate our position that advancing Israeli settlements in the West Bank is an obstacle to achievement of a two-state solution. The end.
Congressman Waltz, I am so astonished by this. She could have said, colleagues, Hezbollah has sent 4,400 missiles unprovoked into Israel. She could have said, colleagues, Iran is running this war on four fronts. Colleagues, Egypt is reeling. She chooses to attack Israel. What is going on with this gang of Biden appointees?
This is just straight up hard left progressive pandering in an election year. But here's the consequences, Hugh, aside from that embarrassing episode. As Iran watches this, as Hamas watches it, its political leadership sitting in Qatar or Turkey or wherever they are today in a five-star hotel, as Yahya Sinwar sitting under the tunnels watches this, they believe they're winning. They're willing to sacrifice their people to turn public opinion against Israel and to drive wedges between the United States and Israel. So they are far less likely to cut a deal on hostages. And I think it is actually inviting a broader war as Hezbollah and Iran see opportunity right now. And that rhetoric in public is so dangerous, on top of Schumer calling for regime change, the Biden administration really condemning Bibi Netanyahu personally. They believe from a propaganda standpoint they're winning. They see opportunity. I fear this is going to get far worse between now and November. And if a full on war with Hezbollah unleashes, what people need to understand is it's going to make Hamas seems like child's play. What the big thing that Hezbollah has that Hamas does not is precision guided ballistic missiles. So they can overwhelm Israel's defenses, its Iron Dome, till it literally they run out of anti-missile missiles, and then start with the precision guided weapons that could hit their nuclear facilities, that could hit Ben Gurion Airport, that could precision strike government facilities in Tel Aviv, and truly put Israel in an existential threat for its survival. This is I cannot believe how utterly reckless and ignorant that statement was, but that is on top of so much else from this administration.
Now that happened overnight, and I'm just amazed. I wanted to send it to you earlier, and I just didn't have. It just happened overnight. I'm just stunned by it. I talked with Continetti about it in the first segment. Congressman, if you drop back to your Green Beret time, your Special Forces time, can Israel move fast enough into southern Lebanon to stop those missiles from flying using tanks and Special Forces paratroopers and everything else? Can they stop that preemptively? Because honestly, it will be unlike anything Israel has ever endured.
Well, and let's add to the list of one other thing that Linda Thomas Greenfield could have talked about was that both Hezbollah and Israel agreed to a demilitarized zone after the 2006 war that Hezbollah has blatantly and openly violated, despite UN peacekeepers sitting right there on the border. She could have talked about that as well, and yet chose again to pander to the left. So look, I think they absolutely could. The issue, the IDF could drive Hezbollah back relatively quickly. The issue will be then the day after. The same issue they're going to face in Gaza. Do they end up occupying that territory, the IDF, and face a protracted insurgency, which is a huge strain on the Israeli military. When it has to call a full mobilization of its reserves, it has immediate impacts on its economy, on its workforce, because the population is so small. The other piece to keep in mind, there's over 100,000 Israeli civilians displaced out of northern Israel. That would be the equivalent of 3 million Americans, given the population differences. And it's a real issue for them internally, politically, logistically, what to do with all of those people that can't go home with the fighting that's going on. Hezbollah has tripled the amount of rockets and drones just in the last month that it's launching into northern Israel. So they're essentially already at a low to medium level war in the north. And the IDF are telling me they're going to drive Hezbollah back one way or another, period. So
And
either
our
Hezbollah is
UN
going to go back
ambassador is
voluntarily
talking
or
about
they're
the
going to do
West
it.
Bank. I just can't believe that. I hope she is a witness before you on the Intel Committee, Foreign Affairs Committee, or Armed Services Committee, because she's an embarrassment, as is the Biden administration.